Americans have had a fascination with outer space since John F. Kennedy said we were going to go to the moon. And we had My Favorite Martian as a weekly TV show. Well, Rainer Zitelmann has a similar fascination with space, and he says that we are on the verge of a entrepreneurial experiment going to space, and we're creating a whole industry around it. I have that right, Rainer?
Yes, absolutely. And a couple of years when I said this, a lot of people laughed at me when I spoke about new space capitalism. But now, I think in a week, we will see the biggest IPO in history with SpaceX. They want to raise $75 billion. This is by far the biggest IPO. So I think it's not longer anything like science fiction, it's reality. And I want to give you one number that is very important for me. Last year, we had 324 rocket launches worldwide, and 165 out of them were SpaceX. So it means if SpaceX were a country, it would be number one, far ahead of China with 88. So this is private, as I call it, it's a space capitalism today. It's no longer led by the government as it was in the 60s or the 70s. It's now run by private companies.
So SpaceX had 165 and China had 88. Who made up the other 70?
Yes, there were some from the Russians, some 8 from Europe. 8, if you compare 8 from Europe and 165 from SpaceX, there were, of course, some other American companies. And one important company, they had 21 launches. It's a rocket lab built by Peter Beck from New Zealand. And I think this is fascinating that a young man in New Zealand could build rocket company that had now 3 times more launches than whole Europe.
That's fascinating. So what are we doing in outer space? Obviously, we're putting in satellite communications, and there's presumably Star Wars is up there, both defensive and I bet you offensive. What you reckon is up there now?
Yes, you're correct. Today the most is about satellites, and only as a thought experiment, if all satellites would stop to work from one day to another, you can try it. You can ask ChatGPT if you don't want to buy my book. I have a chapter in my book. Nothing would work from one moment to the other. So we depend today 100% on satellites. You couldn't call Uber. Nothing would happen without satellites. And we have today 15,000 active satellites in space, and 10,000 out of them are Starlink satellites from Elon Musk company. So this is today. And my book is, on the one hand, about the history of spaceflight. How did it happen that it became private? And on the other hand, it's about the future of spaceflight. And for the pure future, I expect things like, for example, asteroid mining, space tourism, and even to settle Mars, what is Elon Musk's big goal. He even has it in his IPO prospectus that his definitely goal is to settle 1 million people on Mars. Of course, this sounds at first glance like science fiction, but think about one thing. It's not 30 years ago that Elon Musk said there, hang around with some friends. He just sold his company PayPal, and a friend of him asked him, what are you doing? What's the next for you? And Musk said, I think my task is to make mankind a multiplanetary civilization and to settle 1 million people on Mars. And of course, this friend of him, he laughed at him. You're totally crazy. But now I said the numbers, what happened in the meantime, Musk was able to reduce the launch costs if you compare it with a space shuttle by 95%. So it's 95% cheaper as it was before. So a lot of things happened, and I expect a lot of much more fascinating things will happen in the future.
Well, it definitely opens up a all new, brand new frontier for us. I think that of all the things that I've heard, mining may be the most promising and most exciting. I mean, when we mine stuff on our planet, we typically leave it a mess when we're done. And it's also expensive because of gravity. But, if we get out of the Earth's gravitational pull and we get to these other planets that may be rich in minerals and things that we really need, it's not going to be as hard to extract. So I'm led to believe, because you don't have to fight gravity as hard. Is that accurate?
It's not so hard on the one hand. On the other hand, it's much more of this. For example, platinum. I will only give you an example of one asteroid. The name is Psyche. And if you add the value, the estimate of only platinum on this single asteroid, it's worth more than the cross product of the whole world, of all countries together. Of course, it's only theory, because if you would mine all this platinum, the prices would drop dramatic. But the reason is because because a geological process that happened on Earth that we call differentiation didn't happen on the asteroids, and so you have much more like, for example, platinum. But it's not only this. Maybe something is even more has a bigger value, and this is water. And why water? Because it's very expensive to bring water from the Earth to space. But of course, we need water in space. Man needs water to drink, to take a shower, also for isolation against radiation, and also for propulsion, because you can split water in hydrogen and oxygen, and then you have rocket propulsion. So, and you have a lot of water on the asteroids and on the surface of Mars. Of course, not liquid, it's all frozen, but you can make it liquid again.
So Mars does have a lot of frozen water?
A lot of water, we know it 100% now. There were oceans, as on the Earth. There were large oceans, but it's all frozen today. But of course, you can make it liquid again. And you have a lot of other minerals and resources. So this is, of course, asteroid mining and generally space mining is one important thing. Space tourism is another thing. But I think the first thing, and this is the problem, I asked a question in my book: why is that it's now 50 years ago that we landed on the moon, and since then nothing happened? Or now 50 years later, they passed the moon, but there was no landing, and not on Mars. And why is that? And my answer in the book is, because if you do things, you should have a strong reason. And the reason in the 60s was the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. And this was the reason to show what system is better, capitalism or socialism. But in the moment when they planted the flag on the moon, the wind was out of the sail, and there was no reason to go on. And I think the reason, the main reason why we are not already on Mars, as so often in life, is money. Money makes the world go round. This applies also for Mars. And I think with taxpayer funding, it might be possible to finance a few missions to Mars, but not what Elon Musk wants, like this settling on Mars for 1 million people. It's not possible to finance this with taxpayers' money. And so I have some ideas in my book how you can make it how to finance it and how to make a business model.
So, how are people going to survive on Mars? Is it habitable for human life?
Only, only, only underground, or is it like in a huge shopping mall? Because first, of course, you have no oxygen, you have no air to breathe, then you have very, very high pressure, then you have dangerous radiation. So it's not possible to be there as it is on Earth. You have to build artificial buildings. Maybe the first will be below the Earth, but it's you can compare it a little bit. There are huge shopping centers like in Dubai and also in Canada. They have where all is artificial, and it's this way. It's not easy, but and also to go to Mars, there are a lot of problems. But when I wrote my book, I had an interesting communication with Harry Jones. He works for NASA since 60 years. He's now 84 years, and he's a great expert. And he sent me a paper, and the conclusion of his paper was that there are no showstoppers on our way to Mars. It means, from a technical point, there are a lot of problems, but we can solve them today, especially with the Starship from Elon Musk. So I think the Starship will be the first rocket to go to Mars.
Well, Elon Musk has talked about harnessing more of the sun's energy in outer space and says that it's much easier to absorb the sun in outer space. I wonder if that's an opportunity to melt those frozen seas on Mars, and that would then give the ability to produce oxygen, would it not?
Yes, on the one hand, this is correct. On the other hand, on Mars, you have by far not so much sun as we have here near Earth. So this is a problem. But with the sun, what Musk says, of course, is correct. And the next big thing that he's planning is to build data center in space.
Yes.
And of course, for them, you need solar power. And the big advantage is that there are no clouds in space, of course, and it's no day and night, but you have it 24 hours without any clouds. So it's very efficient. And I mentioned before that already today he owns 10,000 Starlink satellites, but now he applied for 1 million more satellites to build this data center in space. So there are a lot of ideas, but there's also a problem in space. And I discuss also this problem in my book. There is the problem is property rights. There is an outer space treaty from 1967, and according to Article 2 of this outer space treaty, it's prohibited for countries to claim ownership over celestial bodies or land on celestial bodies. So this is crystal clear in this agreement that private property for countries, it's not allowed. What's not clear is how is it with private companies or private person. There is nothing in the contract, because I think at this time in the 60s, no one could imagine people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk who have so much money that they can do it on their own risk. But so there's a legal dispute among space lawyers whether it's allowed or not to claim ownership on land on celestial bodies. But I think this is the key for everything. And I have an idea in my book, because I will start at a different point. I think private property is absolutely necessary because no economic system on Earth works without private property. There were 24 experiments with socialism in the last century, and they failed without any exception. In the Soviet Union, in Cuba, in North Korea, in East Germany, and they failed everywhere. And I don't see why something that failed everywhere on Earth should be possible on Mars or on Moon. So it's only possible with private property. And I asked the question in my book, who should have the right to acquire private property in space? And my answer is straightforward. Those who are willing to take the risk,
Yes.
who have the money, and who have the technical ability. Of
Well,
course, not you and me. We can't go there.
You could really just say whoever can get there. I mean,
Yes,
that would narrow the field pretty quickly. So I want to ask you about that asteroid, Psyche. How far away is that from Earth? Can you get there?
Yes, there is a probe just on the way, but it will take a couple of years to go there because there's a so-called asteroid belt. It's between Mars and Jupiter. And there are more than 1 million asteroids, more than 1 million, but they are far to reach. It's not impossible, but there, on the other hand, there are 40,000 near-Earth asteroids, near-Earth. These are the asteroids we have fear about. You know, this movies like Armageddon, where the asteroid is going to destroy the Earth, or the science fiction movies. And we have 40,000 of them, and it's not so far to reach them. It's even in a way easier than reaching the moon. So Psyche is far away, but there are a lot of others, but the problem is always also the same with property. I think it would be much easier if you say, okay, whoever reaches an asteroid, he can own it, ownership, and then my idea is bring the asteroid to the stock exchange. And then everyone can have shares. You, me, everyone, maybe with $100. There's maybe a Psyche REIT, a real estate investment trust. And I think this is the way how to finance it.
We'll get right back to the show after this brief word from our sponsor, Masculine Man Essentials. Look, most deodorants on the shelf are full of aluminum, parabens, and synthetic junk. Masculine Man Essentials goes at it differently. All natural ingredients, built for men, and it actually holds up through the whole day long. Whether you're at the office, at the gym, in traffic, or just getting home for the night, try Masculine Man Essentials. I've been using it, and I can tell you, it's the real deal. Head to masculinemanessentials.com, grab yourself a 2-pack or a 4-pack, use the promo code TRUTH at the checkout to save on your first order, and the link is in today's show notes. As you know, we don't put our name on anything that we haven't tried and believe in. So when I tell you about Nessa's Hemp, I want you to listen up. Nessa's Hemp is a Chicago-based company that makes hemp, and it was founded by Anessa. And what she's built is really something. We're talking about clean, high-quality hemp products with no gimmicks, just real ingredients, real transparency, with real results. Whether you're dealing with stress, sleep issues, inflammation, or you just want to add something natural to your wellness routine, Nessa's Hemp has something to offer you. Head over to nessahemp.com, that's NESAS hemp.com, and check out what they've got. Use our promo code TRUTH for a discount just by being our listener. So is Psyche beyond Mars then? My space geography is not that great.
Psyche is between Mars and Jupiter. You know, I
heard you say that.
In our solar system, it's first Mercury, Venus, and then the Earth, Mars, and then the next is Jupiter. And the asteroid belt is between Mars and Jupiter. But it's not only Psyche. There are tens of thousands asteroids which have very valuable, especially from the so-called PGM group. This is platinum. And there are a lot of them. Psyche is only one example.
How did you get interested in outer space, and how did you acquire this great wealth of knowledge that you possess?
Yes, first I started when I was 9 years old, because this was the time for the first moon landing, and I edited, published a newspaper for school newspaper at this time. It was called Galaktische Zeitung, like galactical newspaper. And I read a lot of books when I was 9 and 10 years old about space, about astronomy, so it started very, very early in my life. And now, later on, in the last years, I became very interested for another reason, because I saw that something that no one could imagine just 20 years ago, that spaceflight would be dominated by private companies, that this happened because back then, when I was young, space exploration was government run. And today, it's different. Even this year, I mentioned the number from last year. We had roughly 100 launches this year, but more than half were carried by SpaceX. And I was interested, how did it happen? And for me, it's also an example that private enterprise and capitalism is much more efficient and superior to government-led solutions. And this is for me a great example to prove it.
Well, it is the new frontier. We are watching Christopher Columbus in real time, and it is fascinating. How long do you think it's going to be realistically before we are able to explore our own solar system in a meaningful way and learn exactly what is on those planets and what might be out there?
Okay, I think it's realistic that within the next 10 years, the first man will land on the moon, on Mars. Within the next 10 years. Musk had a plan to do it faster. He planned it even to do it from now on in 3 years. But now he had a conversation the beginning of the year with NASA, and they talked him in first give priority to the moon, because they have fear that the Chinese will be first on the moon, because China has the goal to land there before 2030. So I think it's not so important, because the United States were even there 1969. So let them go there. For me, it wouldn't be a priority, but for NASA, they think different. They want the Chinese to go there first. And so there was a conversation between the new leader of the new CEO of NASA. His name is Zitelmann, and SpaceX and Blue Origin. And he told them, set your priority first to the moon. And what Musk will do in the next years, starting to build a city on the moon. This is the next goal, building a city on the moon.
We just had a space launch that orbited the moon. How close did that capsule get to the moon? How far from the moon were they?
I don't know exactly the distance, but I know it was 6,000 kilometers more far away than in 1969 when we were first there. But I think this is not a big thing, you know. Of course, yes. I appreciate it, but if they landed on the moon in 1969, and you know they did it not only one time, they did it 6 times total. The first one was 1969 in July, and the last one was 1972. And now, for 54 years later, only to pass by, they made a big public relation event from this. Oh, we were now 6,000 kilometers more far away than we were 50 years ago. But I think it's ridiculous, because if you think about the progress in technology, in the meantime, what happened in the last 55 years with computers, personal computers, with iPhones, with artificial intelligence, and then you have to understand, why was there all this stagnation in manned spaceflight? And this is the question of my book. I know there are some people who have even doubts Whether it was real, the moon landing, they say it happened in the TV studio. I don't believe in it. I don't think. I think it was real. But of course, you have to explain why didn't it happen after this. And I think this is the reason for the stagnation is because it was for decades done by the government. I give you one example. After the moon landing, the next program was the space shuttle. And this was a total failure, the space shuttle. It was expected to development cost $5 billion, and then for every flight, 10 million. But the reality was that every flight cost 1.5 billion. And they had planned with, that was the estimate, 140 flights every year. And in the end, in 30 years, it was only 135 flights, and also 14 people killed with these explosions of two of the space shuttles. So, and my book is about why did it happen? Why was it such a disaster? And then in 2011, this was a very important year, 2011. The title of my chapter is The End of the Future, because in 2011, the United States were not longer able to bring their own astronauts from American soil with an American rocket to the International Space Station, because the space shuttle program was finished and they had no alternative. They tried, but they had no. And so they relied, the United States, on the Russians with old-fashioned Russian Soyuz rockets, because they were not able to bring their own astronauts to the International Space Station. And this was a moment, they called it in NASA, then they tried the Hail Mary move. You know it from the Hail Mary move. You tried last time. In most cases, it doesn't work. But their Hail Mary move was SpaceX. And there was one woman employee in NASA, and she told, every week someone from my colleagues came in my room, oh, I'm so sad for you that you have to work with these idiots, with these crazy private spaceflight people. So they didn't believe in it. She believed in it, but most of them, the politicians said, it's a crazy idea, private. It's only the government that can do it. It's not possible. But there were some people, okay, we failed, we tried everything, and so let's do this Hail Mary move. But in this time it worked. And in 2020, 9 years later, America was able again to bring from American soil with American rockets, American astronauts to the International Space Station. But this time it was private with the Falcon 9 rocket from SpaceX. And this is the story how I start in my book about the history of space travel. And then I look in the future, what will be the next steps, the things we talked about, like asteroid mining, Mars, space tourism, and all these things.
What an exciting time to be alive. The next 10 years should be really fun to watch unfold. And Rainer Zitelmann, we appreciate your coming on The Truth today to give us a look behind the curtain. And it is just fascinating, and I'm full of enthusiasm for what lays ahead.
It's great. And I want one thing. If people maybe in our age, I don't know, what's your age?
Oh, I'm old. I'm 73.
Okay, I'm 69 now.
You're
we
a
are the
youngster.
same age. But people who have children, give this book, New Space Capitalism, to your children, because this is the future. If they don't know what to study, don't study any bullshit things like gender studies or things like that. This is a crazy idea. Give them this book, New Space Capitalism, and I hope your children will be so enthusiastic about these things as I were as a child, and maybe they will study anything with space, and then they have a great future. I'm absolutely sure.
New Space Capitalism is the name of the book. Rainer Zitelmann is the author. Where do we get the book, Rainer?
You can get it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's published by Skyhorse Publishing. You can also get to the website of Skyhorse, but if you look on Amazon, New Space Capitalism, you can pre-order now and you will get it. I think it's now in a couple of days. And the great thing is, this IPO from SpaceX will happen, we hope, on June 12th. And my book will publish maybe the same day. So
that would be exciting. Have you gotten yourself subscribe for some SpaceX stock?
I don't think so, because it's a great company. I admire them. But to be honest, with investments, I'm like a passive, exchange traded funds ETF. And also, I don't think that I'm smarter than Warren Buffett is. And Warren Buffett never bought something with an IPO. So everyone thinks different about it. But I don't think being smarter than Warren Buffett.
Well, Warren Buffett was late to buy Apple as well. So
yes, this is right. This is right. He's not always right.
Personally, I want some. I'm not going to bet the farm on it, but I'd like a little piece of that myself. So we'll see how it unfolds. Thank you so much, Rainer, and have a great rest of your day and a nice weekend.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.